All right, here we are. Another one, another famous rant from yours truly. Rob Reiner has died. He and his wife were reportedly stabbed to death in their home, allegedly by their own son. More on that later. But that's not the real news of the story. No. No one really cares about that. No one fucking cares about the deceased, apparently. No one is paying attention to the perpetrator or the assailant. Who looks there when considering the cause and effect of the death of innocents? I hope y'all caught the sarcasm there. The real news, apparently, however, is how Donald Trump responded to the news. You see, Trump had the audacity to commit the grave sin of not kissing the posthumous ass of a dead celebrity. And my God, the sheer number of brainless midwits walking lockstep with mainstream news on this tabloid appetizer is fucking embarrassing. But first, let's acknowledge some context, shall we? This is all in the backdrop of Charlie Kirk's assassination. Both Rob Reiner and Charlie Kirk died awful, violent deaths, and that's about where the similarities end. These two events are otherwise in no way related or even comparable to one another at all. And sincerely fuck anyone stupid enough to try and conflate the two. Rob Reiner was an artist, an entertainer, a movie director to be precise, and while he may have been politically active, he was not frontlined politically. His voice and his opinions were not necessarily for life and living. He didn't make a living on his politics. That was just something he happened to be strongly pushing. He was killed in his own home, allegedly by his own sons for reasons most likely, more on that later, not related to politics. And we are all watching the vast majority of the right not cheering and celebrating his death. Charlie Kirk was a frontline political activist who was assassinated in broad daylight because of his influence in politics, and afterwards, everyone watched the left celebrate and cheer his demise. Being upset that Trump didn't reverence Rob Reiner the way we reverence Charlie is peak midwit. Now, we're going to go ahead and review what Trump actually said. All right, here we are. Here is the damaging PR snafu in question. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling, but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession with President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before, may Rob and Michelle rest in peace. Well, that was certainly petty and totally, totally, exactly, almost verbatim. Just like how we watched the left wish death on Erica and Charlie's children following his public assassination. Totally the same. There's no difference whatsoever. Again, I need to stress my sarcasm in these moments because this is the fucking internet. Now, let's take a moment and really dissect, in a way I've seen no one else do, what this has actually said, what it's not saying, what it's doing. and compare it to the typical leftist response we would have had with Charlie. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny detail that sticks out to me. Just a little morsel that just rang in my ears in its absence. When it comes to Reiner's demise, not once does Trump ever say that he deserved it. Trump does not say, this was awful, but this was unfortunate. No one deserves this, but there's no equivocating in this statement. There's no justification. There are no excuses about what happened to Rob Reiner. Trump is just being Trump, who simply told us all he now, how he remembered Rob Reiner, while reminding us all that what happened to him was a terrible thing, because it was a terrible thing. And all Trump could remember about Rob Reiner in his demise was his TDS antics, which, by the way, if you go on your X feed, are uh, they are a matter of public record, and they are gargantuan in supply. That this guy was an absolute madman when it came to TDS. That is not even in question. I didn't even go and find the image of it because, trust me, you will find it. It's not that hard. What's baffling to me is what Trump didn't say, which is what people are acting like he said, which is something along what Styx posted. Thank you, Styx, for this wonderful contribution to the discussion. Funny to see people simping for Rob Reiner. Are you insane? I'm not going to pretend it is anything but funny that he is dead. Virtue signaling, kiss my ass. Okay, Styx chose violence today. That's his prerogative. But what I need to make everyone aware of is those two posts are not in any way the same, not in tone, length, or intent. And someone really needs to explain to Carnal why Trump's post is being treated like he wrote Styx's post, because I'll admit Styx straight up chose violence. All right, he right or wrong, he's out of line. Now, what Trump did, in fact, was acknowledge that what happened to Rob Reiner was terrible. Was terrible, without reservation or caveat. That's important. Because we don't get that from the left. With left, they're all caveats. There's always a but. There's always a justification. There's always a but. My violence. None of that. None of that shit from Trump at all. Thank God. But then we get this shit from Blair White. Two posts, one right after the other. I reject this new cultural norm of dancing on the graves of people with different politics. It's fucking sick. Okay, Blair. Um, no one danced on Rob Reiner's grave, you homosexual twink. We simply refuse to be Democrats and engage in political necrophilia. That's what happened. No apologies. There's no caveat here. Um, just we didn't kiss Rob Reiner's ass is what happened. But Blair wasn't the only one. So we're gonna look at a few posts one after the other. First up, we have a Metatron who said, the beginning was good, but the latter part is out of place and in poor taste. I'll fix it. What I think the president should have said instead, and he gives off his preferred reading. Okay, Metatron, sure. Tim Pool chimes in. Trump has personal reasons to be upset with Reiner, but he can do better. This was not appropriate. Rob was very gracious when Charlie was murdered. We can return that grace. All right, Tim. I'll keep that in mind. The drunk Republican. Trump is my favorite president of my lifetime. But we are rapidly approaching the point at which his actions will reflect on Vance, who must win. If he loses, Trump will be fine, but the rest of us are beyond effed. So forgive me for not clapping every time Trump does a stupid. Wow, Mr. Drunk Republican, I had no idea that Karl Rove was running your fucking presidential campaign advisement. I didn't know we were back to the days of Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney. Oh my God, are those the politics we're going back to? Does that shit work now? Holy fuck, let's go back to 2005. That's where we're at, right? That's the game plan. That's what's worked for us. Yeah, fuck the drunk Republicans. Then we have Thomas Massey. Regardless of how you felt about Rob Reiner, this is inappropriate and disrespectful discourse about a man who was just brutally murdered. I guess my elected GOP colleagues, the VP and White House staff, will just ignore it because they're afraid. I challenge anyone to defend it. Defend what, Mr. Massey? Not to be outdone, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the irrelevant and soon to be out the door, has given us her commentary. Rob Reiner and his wife were tragically killed at the hands of their own son, who reportedly had drug addiction and other issues. And their remaining children are left in serious mourning and heartbreak. This is a family tragedy, not about politics or political enemies. Many families deal with a family member with drug addiction and mental health issues. It's incredibly difficult and should be met with empathy, especially when it ends in murder. All right. You know, I'm there's a reason why I decided I was not going to go ahead and cover each of those topics one by one. Because to me, um, I'm going to be honest, that they don't seem to reflect true, honest, independent individual thoughts. From my perspective, their opinions are more of a vibe, yo, and when you get right down to it, what people really are upset about is that Donald Trump didn't give Rob Reiner more. They all seem to collectively be asking, why couldn't Trump treat poor Rob Reiner with the same respect and dignity as Charlie Kirk? Well, to answer your question, very simply, Rob Reiner isn't Charlie Kirk. Rob Reiner wasn't publicly executed for what he represents. Rob Reiner wasn't killed for what he stood for. Rob Reiner isn't dead for his political opinions. And far more importantly, stay with me here, Rob Reiner isn't dead for having Trump's back. Rob Reiner doesn't deserve to be treated like Charlie Kirk for any reason, least of all for the sake of decency or this mythical sake of the office of the president. Donald Trump does not owe Rob Reiner any respect by virtue of the fact that he is no longer among the living. Rob Reiner is not our friend. Rob Reiner was not a martyr for our cause. And it doesn't matter that he just so happens to have not been among the thousands of Trump's enemies who cheered when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. You don't get bonus points or kudos for not being a piece of shit when your side was being shitty while your side is still the enemy and opening fire. And quite honestly, I thought this was the one lesson the left had finally taught us. I sincerely thought we'd gotten to the point where we had all learned and internalized by now that decency and respect are earned. and the currency by which they are earned is loyalty. We watched the left drag Charlie Kirk's name through the mud. And these so called MAGA fucking midwits want us to turn on Trump because he refused to give a dead enemy a degree of honor and respect that would have never been reciprocated. There is no moral high ground when you are in conflict with moral inferiors. I I have to say that again because people really have a hard time learning this apparently. There is no moral high ground when you are in conflict with moral inferiors. Now, I hope that sinks in this time because now enough about the news, about the news. Let it never be said that Carnal does not come to bring the meat and bones of the discussion. What did Rob Reiner actually die of? Why were he and his wife so viciously and violently attacked and killed? No, wait for it. You're going to want to sit down for this one. He was a drug addict. He was a fucking drug addict. And if you look at the reports, if you look at all of the reporting that we have on Rob Reiner, by the way, this is what he looks like now. This is Nick Reiner, the son today. That's what he looks like. This bag that's not a sweatshirt underneath him. That's a do not kill yourself bag that's wrapped around him. We're gonna go to Rolling Stone. There's something you need to learn about Nick Reiner. Nick first went to rehab at age 15 and spent time in and out of facilities throughout his teenage years. At the age of 19, several years after being clean, he worked on a movie called Being Charlie with his dad, which is a sumo semi autobiographical movie about this kid's homelessness and drug problems. At age 19, 4 years of hell, this kid watched his father turn his trauma into a movie. And just so you kind of understand the kind of parenting that went on, they were the, this is where parents miss their shit. He says, if I wanted to do it my way and not go to the programs they were suggesting, then I had to be homeless. Which Rob Reiner then responds, the programs work for some people, but they don't work, but it can't work for everybody. When Nick would tell us that it wasn't working for him, we wouldn't listen. We were desperate, and because the people had diplomas on their wall, we listened to them when we should have been listening to our son. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a twofold problem. One, the parents chose comfort and expertise over tradition. That is what happened here. That's why Rob Reiner is in a 6-foot hole. Now, legitimately, this is why. Now, I'm not going to speak ill of the dead, and neither did Trump, but we also have to remember that Rob Reiner was a bigwig in the Weinstein Epstein playground we know as Hollywood. Before we come to the defense of one of Trump's most vocal haters, it might be wise to get all of the details as to the motives of his killer before we on the right disavow and tone police the most powerful voice we have had on our side in the last fucking century. How about, ladies and gentlemen, we wait for the bodies to get cold and wait for the entire story behind this tragedy to unfold before we spurg out on mean tweets from the man we elected to be the tweeter in chief. We should not, after so much has already been exposed a- about Trump's enemies, that we should be so certain that any one of Trump's enemies should have any redeeming virtues just because they happen to be dead and someone said mean things about them. Priorities, people. We need to, follow the pattern and say, Rob Reiner or Trump. And if you chose Rob Reiner, you chose wrong. That's it. That's all I've got for this. This is the ruminating on Rob Reiner. Stay carnal and God bless everyone.